Fan.
It's a special homecoming edition of the Friday Football Feast this week. Join us at Buffalo Wild Wings on the U of M campus this Friday following the Vikings vs. Rams Thursday night showdown. Plenty of great food and drinks to be had, plus great prizes up for grabs. Doors open at 8 a.m. Get all the details now at KFAN.com, keyword calendar.
Timberwolves debut tonight. Dane Moore from the Dane Moore podcast, who's very nice to 9 to noon. He's in Southern California to cover the game. He'll be joining us within the next 10 minutes. Then Kwesi Adofo-Mensah about 11:35 to finish 9 to noon from Twin Cities Orthopedics Performance Center.
Yeah, and from earlier in the show, we were doing some KO cuts, and we joked about it even in the open about how Kevin O'Connell returning to SoFi and what that might mean, how the Rams would receive him. And, here he was yesterday with a KO cut as he was kind of talking about his relationship with Sean McVay, what he's built, obviously now as head coach of the Vikings, what went into that, but some audio on KO's relationship with McVay.
That had an incredible impact on not only my coaching career, but just, me as a human. I have so much respect for him, how he runs that organization, his leadership, his football intellect. He's as good as it gets, and I've got nothing but love for him, and we'll always be like that.
Yeah, and that kind of struck me. It reminded me. And I just always go back to previous Vikings related area. It's eras. It's all about the purple for me. But I remember the way that Zimmer would talk about Bill Parcells and everything when Zimmer was handling any sort of problem or even enjoying a lot of the successes in his coaching career. It would always go back to Bill Parcells. Now, you can correct me if I'm wrong. I don't remember Zimmer ever facing Parcells in a game as head coach of the Vikings. Parcells had long retired by then.
Yeah.
So, but this is a little bit interesting, a little bit different, and this is not an uncommon thing. Whether it's Dolphins and Niners with McDaniel versus Shanahan, etc. These coaching trees, we go all over it. LaFleur's in the mix. McVay and his touch on the NFL spreads wide. But it's just, whether McVay wants to beat on his former OC or the OC wants to show the head coach that I took a few tricks with me from LA and I switched them up a little bit and they're even better now. I love how, albeit, so many millions of people, new coaches every year, I still love how tight-knit it is and getting to see, albeit from an outside perspective, some of the deep relationships that are built behind the shield. And this is just super cool. The innovative and a team that's struggling right now in the Rams and Kevin O'Connell trying to get off the schneid after his first loss of the season with that relationship built in, everything that goes with it. The off-field emotion, personal element to this is very fascinating to me on Thursday.
I'm going to put this. McVay has a tree. McVay is a tree.
He is.
McVay has limbs. LaFleur, Brandon Staley, Kevin O'Connell, those would be three of them. But the old oak tree that has the most limbs that created the McVay tree is Mike Shanahan, former coach of the Denver Broncos. They all originate from Mike Shanahan, Kyle Shanahan's father, and from what he did when they were all together in Washington.
Doesn't that connect Kubiak too?
Yep. Gary Kubiak was part of that back to Denver.
And there's a Robert Saleh.
Yeah, he's from the Kyle Shanahan tree.
Okay, yeah.
He was defensive coordinator for the Niners.
6 degrees of Shanny.
Now,
wow.
the relationship that Kevin has with Sean McVay, it's incredibly deep. Now, Brandon Staley, who used to be the Chargers coach, and less things have changed. And we played Staley this year. He was a defensive coordinator, maybe for the Texans. But I think Brandon Staley is Kevin O'Connell's best friend in the NFL. And he was defensive coordinator for the Rams when Kevin O'Connell was offensive coordinator. The wives are really close. The kids are really close, stuff like that. Staley's no longer there, but that comes from
He's actually with the Niners now.
With the Niners.
As an assistant.
Yep, thank you. I knew we played him earlier. But here's how close Kevin O'Connell and Sean McVay are. in Kevin's first season. We haven't even played a game yet. We're coming up to training camp. We're at training camp. Haven't even, maybe played one preseason game. Kevin's first season. And they have the night practice, okay, at TCO Stadium. And McVay saw on the big, vivid, beautiful screen at TCO Stadium, well, there was something on social media where he looked at multiple shots of this practice on that screen. And I think he said to O'Connell, I'm pretty sure he said to O'Connell, you can pull scheme from what you're seeing up there. Because if you see it play after play after play, you can pull scheme from it.
Oh, come on.
Well, no, he's right. So I don't know if the whole thing changed and we're not going to have the camera in the shot anymore or whatever. But
so he sees some post on X or Twitter of we got the cartoon with the microphone that's talking to all the fans. Thanks for coming out. It's TCO. Yep. So you're out there, and they just pan and they're showing replays on the big screen. Yep. And McVay gets his notebook out.
Well, no, he doesn't get his notebook out because there was nothing to pull from that. But he told Kevin because the screen is so vivid. Yeah. And he's like, showing that on social media, if you show the wrong thing, you're showing scheme. And Kevin's like, I agree with you. So that's just
awesome.
That personifies how close they are. Dane Moore of the Dane Moore podcast at Dane Moore NBA via the X Machine covers the Minnesota Timberwolves, does wonderful work. He's in SoCal. We will link up with him around the corner. After that, Kwesi Adofo-Mensah from the TCO radio studio. But first, here comes young Maxwell.
The Fan and two men in a junk truck want to give you a shot to put $1,000 in your hand with our national cash contest. Enter the keyword check at KFAN.com now for your shot at winning. That's keyword check. Enter now at KFAN.com.
Comes Dane Moore of the Dane Moore podcast at Dane Moore NBA, covers the Minnesota Timberwolves. I'll learn more about all of that at Dane Moore NBA once again, and he's in Southern California. He's very kind. Dane, Paul Allen, how are you? Dane?
Hey, what's up, man?
What's going on? Hey, I appreciate you doing this. Well, when I started the process, I didn't know you were in SoCal, so I don't want to take too much of your time in case your hotel's by a beach, and I want you to fully enjoy that and fully enjoy the SoCal vibe. But this is exciting. Season opener tonight, Sacramento in a couple of days, DiVincenzo, Julius Randle going against his former team, J.J. Redick now coaching LeBron's team. This is a cool one tonight, man.
I think it is. I think it's going to be. I mean, obviously, there's a million layers of this that are interesting, but I think in particular, PA, it's going to be a good test for what this roster no longer has at power forward. I'm thinking about the Anthony Davis matchup a lot in this one, and kind of Rudy and Kat would tag team that, right? Kind of like they did with Jokic. And for me, that's, I don't know, maybe that's just where my head is right now. I'm trying to think about this game, but it's kind of an interesting thing to me, given how this roster has changed.
We had Chris Finch on, as we do weekly, earlier in the radio show about 90 minutes ago. I think my penultimate question was, can DiVincenzo give you quality point guard minutes even in short spurts? And he said yes, and in long spurts. And then he started talking about just what he's seen really over the last couple of weeks with Dante DiVincenzo and the way he attacks all of those guard spots and really the small forward spot too. What do you think about all that? And what do you think of DiVincenzo?
Well, the DiVincenzo part, I think maybe we've already established this, right? We've been doing this for a month post-Cat trade. That was a real piece in this thing, right? In being able to, the fit that he has as a player within the context of this team, and then, the contract that he's on versus the contract that Cat's on. I mean, I'm not saying he's as good of a player as Cat, but he makes 1/5 as much money as Carl does, and they're the same age. So there's the asset value of it, right? That's what I think we've been spending. We spent the first couple of weeks thinking about, okay, like this is a nice piece, but man, in preseason, watching him, obviously the 3-point shooting popped, and we're like, okay, this team's not going to be missing any 3-point volume, but that playmaking stuff. What Finch is talking about at point guard, maybe I didn't understand DiVincenzo's game enough. I think that is huge that they have another handler here who you can confidently spread the floor, run pick and roll with, outside of Mike Conley and maybe Ant. Like this team, they were thin. A month ago, they were very thin at point guard with, 37-year-old Mike Conley being the main piece there. I think that DiVincenzo is only getting better in my mind, the acquisition of Dante.
Hey, Dane, it's Nordo here. When we look at other sports, sometimes we talk about chemistry and bringing new people into the mix, et cetera. But hoops, it seems like in some cases that learning curve and that time of warming period, that it can be a little bit shorter. I mean, do you expect overall that this team's ready to pop from the jump, maybe some growing pains here and there? How do you view that with some new faces in the mix?
Yeah, I always think about what Finch said when they traded for Gobert. He said it was going to be a seamless transition, right? Rudy was going to come in and it was going to be clean right away. Yeah. Obviously, that wasn't the case, right? I mean, that first year was tough. There's injuries and stuff going on there that kind of delayed it, but it really took us like a year for that acclimation to come in. But I think it's a good point, Nordo, that it's not normally that long. I don't think we're going to come in today and be like game one. Okay, everything's clean. This is perfect. They have it all figured out. But if I had to handicap it, I think they find the chemistry they found with Rudy faster here with this new group. I think as good as Rudy is, there's a greater displacement value of what he does, or doesn't do offensively than maybe what we're thinking the displacement that Julius Randle is going to have given his style of play. Everybody seems to be pretty concerned about that, and I get that to some extent. But I do think this will be cleaner faster than the Gobert acquisition was.
Let me ask you this, and I'm glad you mentioned, with Anthony and working with Julius Randle. I was at the facility. We did the 9 to noon show at Mayo Clinic Square, and I was watching Ant practice. And this guy is so hard on himself. And I know you're super close to it, and you follow this thing at such a closer angle than I do. How hard is Ant really on himself to be great, to take on and shoulder the burden of a franchise in some respects as his star continues to rise? It was just kind of impressive to watch a guy in a practice format that he's swearing at himself. He's full sweat reps. I mean, this guy is just relentless on the floor. Do you see that similarly with Ant in your area?
I do. I mean, I've just seen him be pushed the first 4 years of his career. And I think he needed that, right? Whether it be from, his individual trainer or from, Ricky Rubio that first year, D'Angelo Russell later on, Pat Bev. But I think the biggest one is Finch. And the way that Finch and him have a relationship that Ant allows Finch to push him in the way that he does, I think has made it so here we are year 5, and you're seeing what you're seeing, Nordo. I can tell you that is not what Anthony Edwards looked like in training camp 4 or 5 years ago. This is a progression, and I think he deserves a lot of credit, but I think the people, teammates, executives, and particularly coaches he's had around him have just made this guy a dog, man. Like there is a fight there all the time, and obviously, we see all these other elements of his game that are growing, but his effort and consistency with effort, that's what raises the ceiling to me with Ant more than anything, because I think rookie, sophomore year, those were kind of concerns, and now you're seeing a guy, I mean, just look at him, right? Look at him opening night year 2 versus what he's going to look like just body-wise tonight. It's a different human.
What lastly here, what are you seeing with Julius Randle from what you have seen? When I posed it with Finch earlier about Randle tonight, he's like, it made it sound like he wants him to ball hog a little more. He wants him to shoot a little more. He's deferring maybe a little too much. He's a really gifted passer, specifically off the pick and roll. But you have a trained eye. You're an elite basketball mind. What do you think of Julius Randle?
Honestly, that kind of makes me nervous. I like the idea of like kind of scaling him over time. But obviously, Finch is there every day coaching him, and he has a significantly better idea of all of this than I do. And to be fair, like, we haven't seen much. We saw Julius play one preseason game. He's been limited in camp, but I loved in the preseason how the ball moved, man. Like, that was just special and different, and I know that's Finch's preferred style of play. I think, like you said, like, Julius can move it, but it also gets sticky with him. And the same thing happened with Ant and Cat, right? Like, sometimes it was sticky when both of them are out there. I'm really curious to see how sticky the ball looks when both Julius and Ant are out there. But, man, Finch knows Julius way, way better than any of us do, and understands how to effectively use him. So if he's going to really play through him tonight, I'm interested to see what it looks like. But I just hope there's still that ball movement energy in the game the whole time, regardless of who's on the floor.
What's the Dane Moore podcast schedule look like? Are you doing one tomorrow at Dane Moore NBA to learn more about it? What's the schedule look like?
Yeah, man, we're actually going to go do one right after the game tonight, so we can have it in your podcast players on Wednesday morning. I'm out here in LA with Kyle Teige, and we'll record afterwards, and then off to Sacramento tomorrow morning, and we'll do more pods out there as the week one begins. But no shortage of Timberwolves podcasting going on over here.
Yep, and we will be listening. Thank you very much for the time, and enjoy the game tonight, okay?
Yes, sir. Talk to you later.
Dane Moore follows and covers the Minnesota Timberwolves at Dane Moore NBA via Twitter. Around the corner, we head into our final segment. It's a marathon segment, courtesy of FVP Batteries and FVP Parts. The marathon features Kwesi Adofo-Mensah, General Manager of the Minnesota Vikings. And that's Around the Corner on KFAN. Welcome back to 9 to Noon from Twin Cities Orthopedics Performance Center. And this is the X's and O's portion of the equation to finalize festivities. And joining us is Minnesota Vikings General Manager Kwesi Adofo-Mensah. He's in his third year as General Manager for the Minnesota Vikings. And oh wow. Before we get into festivities, wow. The Rams just traded for Max Crosby. I'm just kidding. I'll loosen things up here a little bit.
You got to.
Which camera, Curly? Hey.
Yeah.
I'm just playing with you. Okay. All right, 3-2. We do talkbacks on Tuesdays where, like, when Kevin O'Connell joins for X's and O's, we'll have some fan inclusion for like up to 30 seconds. And the person who did the talkback today to the free iHeartRadio app actually gets into like the first thing I was going to bring up, and here it is.
Crazy! You've been doing a really good job. This is I Bleed Purple Guy, Son Guy from Burnsville. I'm a diehard. I bleed purple, baby. My question for you, though, is what's the difference? What did you see in Will Reichard out of other kickers that made you draft him when you drafted him? You know, what was the it factor? Because I think you nailed that one. Keep it going. You're bringing us to the promised land.
They're all wound up. I mean, I know we're off a loss here. It's still 5-1. It has a wonderful feel to it. And the kicker, I mean, seriously, think the Houston Texans game. 58-yard field goal. I mean, this had to make you smile. He hits the upright, and it's the metallic object that moves. not the football. That's how strong his leg is. So Will Reichert, good morning.
Incredibly talented. I think back to the process in drafting him, and that's really an example of how we do things in this building. It started with our great scouts who identified him in Alabama, gave us great character, told us about the person, but also the good player. We have some quantitative people who really do a great job of contextualizing performance. So field goal kicking is one of those things you can be pretty specific about accuracy relative to the how hard what he was asked to do, whether 50-yarders or 40-yarders in conditions or whatever. So we have some pretty good metrics like that, which narrowed him down to be in the top 3. But it's that last piece that you care about a lot. And me and Had have a great reputation together, just making moves together. I think he's one of the bright stars in this league. And I'll never forget him telling me this story about at the combine, and they were having a kicking competition. Now, I'm not going to tell you the full story. I'll leave that to us. But what he told me about that story is what I always think great kicker should have. It's like a closer in baseball. I don't know if you were watching the ALCS. I have a close friend who works for the Guardians, and you're watching Clase come out of the bullpen. You ever think about that, working out of as a closer? It's all this crazy stuff. There's bases loaded. All these people are yelling, and you got to go up there and throw strikes. And I think that's the same mentality of a kicker, right? And that's not normal. No. That is not a normal person who can operate in those things. And the story that Hat told me made me confident that this is the type of person that can operate under those conditions. So we really bet on the performance, but also the person. Our scouts, in addition, right before the draft, they get to sell me on certain things that they want us to do in the draft. And he was one of the people they picked. Imagine a personnel department picking a field goal kicker.
Right.
And the whole building was excited to bring this guy in. And I know we took him. Everybody wasn't sure that who's the best guy, but we're really happy with Will. He's played for Nick Saban. Obviously, he's been around it. He knows what championship standards are like. So we're just really thrilled to have him.
Right here with that explanation. Holy cow, that was great, because there are tentacles to it that I don't think we have enough time to get into. But the relief pitcher part, I love that analogy, and I'm going to try to take it a step farther, and we're going to go back to London. And I don't know what Nick Mullins has coursing through his veins. Seriously, I mean, that was a relief pitcher moment.
Yep.
You got to come in for one play. I think it went 24 or 29, and it's not the first time I've seen it. So therefore, we have past performances here. We have lines. We have equity. And he comes in, and it's a dime. Of course, we're going to throw, with Mullins, and we're like defenses would think run, but not with this in a truncated situation. That's like a relief pitcher. I said it to him in the locker room after the game. I'm like, my man, that was like bottom of the 8th, 2 outs, and you got to strike somebody out to hold everything together. And it's not the first time he's done it. Mullins has some relief pitcher to him, too.
No question. I think it's a perfect example. And we talk a lot about self-belief and confidence and what that looks like. And it looks different for a lot of people. I've known Nick a long time in this league, and I saw his self-belief in San Francisco when he was on the practice squad trying to show that he could play in this league, and all the hours he put into it. That ultimately comes from self-belief. You don't put in hours into something if you don't think there's going to be something on the other end of it. So he's wired that way. You look in his eyes, he's ready for the moment always. That's just who he is, and that's one of the things we love about him as a quarterback.
Now the NFL trading deadline is a couple of weeks away, but the reason I bring that up is because there are undoubtedly, for you, your staff, and scouts and everything, or personnel, it's different this time of the year than it will be in 3 weeks. And the reason I bring it up is to tie it to the coaches, because this is the Thursday night football week. All right. Now, that had some bloodbath to it on Sunday. I mean, it was a very physical game, took a long time, very emotional. So, like, from a coaching standpoint, what do you observe on the second floor or throughout the building that is different this week for O'Connell and the staff?
Yeah, it's just incredibly truncated. It demands efficiency. Obviously, we try to be efficient in everything we do, but there's no fluff. Kevin and I, we love sitting talking about the game for an hour and a half, whatever it is. It's a little quicker, right? It's here are the few bullet points. With his staff, he's got great people on his staff who came here after the game. So maybe you're home with your family. They come here to start loading. Just the people who do the work on the back end that we don't know about, the unsung heroes per se.
Yep.
So a lot of that happens this week, where they're not sleeping too much, but they're trying to truncate a 7-day process into 4. Just incredible how they do it. And we think we have a competitive advantage with our health and performance group. Tyler and his staff do an incredible job getting guys turned over. We think we'll show up the fresher team always, and that's how we're wired to be. So just a lot of people who do that and trying to give us an advantage on game day.
Now, Kwesi, the fan has learned, Kevin O'Connell and some members of his staff et al., football, have won a Super Bowl with Sean McVay and the Los Angeles Rams, the next opponent. So after 7 years working with the San Francisco 49ers, how did you feel into your first one against the 49ers last year? It has to be different than just another game.
It is. It's a tough one because, you talk about, I'll speak to my experience. There's people that you use the term love, but there's a lot of people in that building that I love and genuinely care about what happens to their families, what happens to them. There's always some part of me that deep down will root for them when they're not playing the Vikings, when we're not in the playoffs. That's a team that I want to do well, just for their organization, just for what they've meant to my life. But we all get to this sport at the highest level because we're competitors at the end of the day. So when you see somebody across the line from you, you're trying to win. We'll dap up after the game. I'll tell you I love you after the game. I'll tell you we'll get a drink at the combine after the game. But in between the lines, and that's how these players are. That's one of the things I appreciate so much about these players. Between the lines, they play a sport that is, physical, emotional. After the game, they trade jerseys. They talk about family, college relationships, and things like that. I think that's one of the coolest things about humanity they exhibited on a football field.
Agreed. Kwesi Adofo-Mensah, general manager of the Minnesota Vikings, via X's and O's. And we mentioned it earlier, the NFL trade deadline's a couple of weeks from today. And kind of as the staff situation would go, you and your staff, like what's different now than, say, 3 weeks from now? Because the deadline's 2 weeks away.
I think the difference won't be in terms of the level of work. I think there'll be less curveballs from their boss. As I get names, I got to fire them to my staff. And hey, is this somebody we should consider? What would be the role? What would be the responsibility? Compensation? All those things. Those are quickly evolving conversations that I throw with them. But those things will be removed 3 weeks from now.
So when you say you get names, is that like general managers calling you?
Yeah, we talk.
Hey, what do you think of this?
Yeah, we talk to each other. Certain people are cagier than others. Certain people will just have open, honest conversations about. Look, it's never that you want to move a certain player, but sometimes there are opportunities that work for both sides, and you try and be collaborative. I know every decision we've made here, I speak with the agents of the player maybe involved. You're trying to find win-wins for everybody involved. We think we have a great place here, so we try and keep the most players we can here, and then we'll see on the margins, can we find places to upgrade.
How hard do losses hit you?
In the day-to-day, I think it's my job to be the mean reverter. And what I mean by that is when everybody's high, it's almost my job to, hey, we were 3 plays away from losing that game. And then when everybody's down, it's my job to point out the 3 plays away to make everybody. So I
mean reverter.
Yeah, I
like
don't know.
Ascension
Sorry.
and descension.
Yeah.
Or descending, reverted. Wow.
I gotta stay in the middle.
I love that.
That's kind of just from my background. And you want to get emotional as a trader, as a decision maker. That's not a good thing to do. You're always just waiting for, believing in your process. I believe in this team. We put a lot into it. I believe in our coaching staff. So losses are just opportunities to get better and learn. If you watch from that game, you saw it. That's a heavyweight title bout with 2 great teams, 2 great cultures. And that's how those games look. I've been in those games before. And you lose them and they hurt. But there's also a positive from that is because you're in that game and you're in that title fight. You just, how do I land one more punch so the judge gives me the ruling at the end? And that's what we're trying to figure out.
Okay. Well, let's land the plane on this portion of the equation by asking this. Is it, with your role, with your job, general manager of the Minnesota Vikings, is it difficult leaving work at the facility? I mean, especially as a husband, as a father, and soon to be a father of a second child.
Yep.
And when I say leave it at the facility, I'm talking about the voluminous nature of it. Because, I mean, blessed with this role, that phone might ring at 11 in the evening, and you got to have it next to you. And you have people within your covenant who I would imagine understand that. So it's not acquiescing, it's accepting. But with a child and one on the way and a wife, the balance.
It's hard. I don't want to sit here and say I've got it figured out. But I am going to take my wife to Leon Bridges tonight because I need to be a good husband.
That nice eyebrows, hit that Jenner.
Great. I love Leon. Great, incredible.
Falsetto, I meant.
Oh man.
He's got a really nice
it's
voice.
hard. It's easy with a child, I think, because the second, I don't know, if you got a young child at home, he just brightens your day. I forget about everything else, and I never want him to think for 1 second that I'm abandoning him. So that's very easy when I'm with him. And it's hard because, your family can be the first thing you put aside because they're not holding holding your neck or whatever.
Well, they're the quickest to come back too.
Yeah, the quickest to come back, but it's trying to find a balance. I've tried to get better every year that I've done this job, but it's a hard balance. I think I try and make sure that I'm a B dad, B plus A dad in the off season, and maybe a C plus B minus dad husband in the regular season. You just got to know that it's going to come in waves and things like that, and they understand. They understand the trade deadline's always around Halloween when so they want me home for pictures and things like that, and I'm working on a TJ Hawkinson trade or something like that, but you got to put a smile on your face. You got to be in the moment and present. I've been pretty good about that in my life, just from my previous experience, having experience not taking work home with you. But this job is probably more than that than I've ever experienced. And I'm not going to lie, there's certain times that some stuff falls through the cracks, and you just count on the people in your life to forgive you and help you work to get better.
And thank you for the candid, very vulnerable answer. I appreciate that. Nat, okay, so a couple to close here. When at a National Football League facility, it's always cool publicly to discuss betting with a general manager. The Monte Carlo simulation.
Yep.
Okay, that's the betting bit. Never forgot it when you set it into the season. Taking or declining bets on players. It's like the football version of pass or the don't pass line. And while the bets aren't settled, you've had a fair amount of them here for 7 months now. I want to begin with an under the radar guy, Jihad Ward. And here's why. I mean, he doesn't have a tackle this year. I thought he had one in the last game, but they gave it to somebody else. But he has like 7, 8, 9 pressures. Yep. And then you watch things back and he's like, I don't know, how to define the linebacker, weak side Sam, that old thing. But he's like taking on guys and blowing things up to help somebody else. Yep. So like Jihad Ward, what have you liked?
That's a position where, again, we talk a lot about versatility in our schemes. And he's an incredibly versatile player, can stand up on the edge, be a big edge setter, but he also can move inside and rush the passer, can be a key cog in our games and stunts and different things like that. And you talk about, he's got pressures, he's got a few batted passes. Yeah. He'll also, it's like a pick and roll player. He'll set the pick. Maybe somebody else will get the bucket. He does that in our stunts and different things like that. So, also the character, the person. I don't know if you've been too close around him. He's a Philly guy, so I get along with him. We joke about Jones and different things like that. But he's an incredible personality to have on this team. We're excited. Again, a team is this complex organism of different parts and roles, and he fits one for our team.
Andrew Van Ginkel.
Love Gink, man. That's somebody that, when we first got here, Flo had told me about. And, as a general manager, you're always learning. And I think getting to see his defense for a year, then going back to watch Gink and seeing, okay, this is why this guy thinks he's so valuable, and just really appreciating his skill set, the person. Again, you talk about versatility. I thought, some of the stand-up linebacker stuff he did at the end of the Detroit game really helped us kind of stem the tide a little bit. The batted pass, it's just, he has a, he's like a, not to always use basketball analogies, but like, one of my favorite players growing up was Stacey Augmon. And just the type of guy who would have 5 steals and, 4 rebounds.
Plastic man.
Yeah, plastic man. Yeah. He was never going to have 20 points or whatever, but he'd always make incredibly impactful plays when he did, and filled up a stat sheet. That's Van Ginkel to me.
We're going to need more time next time. Damn, man, we're almost up on 20 minutes. That's unbelievable. Okay, I got to get this one in, man. We'll talk about the players next time with the Monte Carlo simulation. Because I want to close with a common thread. It's important to me, and I think X's and O's, hopefully you. Vikings at Rams Thursday. The boom is at 7:15. What do you remember about venturing to Los Angeles in 2022 and interviewing Kevin O'Connell to become the next head coach of the Minnesota Vikings?
Man. Oh.
I knew it was emotional.
No, it's a great one. Takes me back. So, obviously I'm only a couple weeks into the job,
right.
and I wasn't in the first round of interviews. So first and foremost, I had to catch up. So I watched all the Zooms and took my notes and different things like that. And I had worked with Kevin before, so I knew a little bit about him. But I watched the Zoom and I was blown away. Same as that. I mean, obviously I wasn't there in person, but you're like, man, this guy is incredibly intelligent, just emotionally available, and all those different things. So I'm on the plane, just excited to meet him and reconnect with him. I didn't know if you even remember that we worked together or whatever. So then I get on the plane and I have a pretty detailed, kind of interview process where at the end of the day, you're trying to figure out what it's going to be like to work together. So might as well try. So I kind of have these questions and really scenarios where we sit through and talk football in a certain way that's really going to be our job together. And so we did that for a couple hours, and it was cool to have an audience, right? So Andrew Miller's there watching, and Rob's watching. And,
that's great.
And they're watching us talk about make a quarterback decision together. Yeah. They're watching us. He's explaining to us a play, and you get to see what's really deep in his mind. You know, I think people call it play callers, and it's how they think. It's how he builds plays from players, schemes, different things like that. It's an incredible. There's a play on my board right now that we ran a couple weeks ago. And you just see a bunch of squiggly lines. But the 30 minutes that he explained that, you leave that being like, man, I'm so glad that this guy is the leader of this organization. So I just remember going through that process and just being blown away by it. And because he was such a relatively unknown commodity, that was the only thing that made it hard. But when I went and took my notes, and I have a way of taking notes, I was like, well, that was exactly, there's answers that you put in your answer key that he's saying the exact words.
Right.
And you're like, there can't be a better signal than what he's done, than what he's did. So really, it was just going through that and just talking to the group, and everybody was blown away by that. And also not just by him, but our working relationship, that they could tell what it could be. And so the decision was pretty clear, but it was good to get on a plane and meet him and sit there in LA. They were getting ready for the Super Bowl. So that was, an interesting dynamic. Never forget the phone call to when we offered him the job. And, again, we'd met before, we'd worked before, but just the type of person he is. And I said to him, I only want to do this once, man. And he said, man, I only want to do this once, and I want to do it with you. And that's a cool moment to have. And again, just through the 2.5 years together, just continually proves to me the high caliber person he is, the high caliber thinker, football mind. I think this organization is lucky to have him.
You are spectacular, and the organization is lucky to have you, at least in my estimation. Thank you for the conversation, and we're out here on Tuesdays. You know that.
No music conversation.
Well, I mean, you opened up about children, and I teased you about Max Crosby, and so we went. What we did, we had some audibles. You made Jihad Ward sound like the NFL version of Julius Randle. I wanted to go on that. Stacey Augmon, Pasadena High School. I actually know him and his family.
That's incredible.
There's so many ways we can go. So I'm going to let Sam Newton and Jeff Anderson know every single Tuesday when we're here. If you just want to stop by and chill on the therapeutic Davenport of love, we're here for you to talk about the Monte Carlo simulation. Okay,
always
enjoy it.
It.
I talk like that all the time.
My guy, PA.
Good to see you.
Good to see you.
Kwesi Adofo-Mensah, we thank him for the good times. Likewise for everybody here at TCOPC. Thank you, Eric Nordquist. Thank you, Maxwell Fuller, for guiding the great ship Love Covenant. And most importantly, thank all of you for listening to KFAN, specifically 9 to noon. I'm Paul Allen, Vikings and Rams, Thursday night, the Boom at 7:15 on your home for Minnesota Vikings football, FM 100.3, KFAN, your babyface and L.A. Reid leader. Little song called Two Occasions somebody likes. Bye.